Container Buster journey onward by Master Atlan, Chapter 59. Do you fear what bumps in the night? Small wings fluttered by his ear, and he looked to his shoulder to see a little canary perched upon it. He raised his hand and watched as the tiny beak pecked and snatched up two pieces of food over his sleeve. It hopped onto his arm and looked at him innocently before joining the others. Gujo joyously tossed the bread crumbs and crust out from his spot, leaning against the bench. He watched with a tranquil expression as the little birds came flying down and pecked the pieces off the ground. When the little birds hopped up to his side and twitched their heads rapidly, he slowly lowered his arm to let them pick them out. It was a peaceful, serene scene he was very familiar with during his time at Beacon, especially when they flew away in a panic as his companions dropped into the bench inside. It's not fair, Ruby cried out, accidentally tipping her bag over and spilling the crumbs out as the birds happily had at it. The hooded girl sunk into depression and sprawled out over the bench as she whined in sadness. I get that we did something bad, but why not give us detention or community service or something, anything but being grounded? I'm the leader of my own team at Beacon, and I've been grounded like I'm 12 years old again. She kicked her feet up and waved her arms around in righteous fury. Miss Goodrich isn't my mom, so what does she get to ground me? Jugo simply turned his head back and looked at her. So what if I'm 2 years younger than everyone else? What does that have to do with anything? Ruby cried. Just because I was the youngest doesn't mean I should be getting these kid treatments. I'm becoming a huntress. I should be past the point where people give me timeouts. The energetic hooded girl seemed to deflate and just slumped into her spot on the bench after finishing her rant. Jugo blinked repeatedly before Ruby turned on her side to look at him. Sorry about that. I kinda like to imagine your sort of conversation, so it feels like I'm talking to you. Does that sound weird? Jugo raised his hand and gave it a shaky motion to signify the gray area. That's what I thought. Ruby frowned and curled up into the bench like a frustrated animal. Ever since she started hanging out with Jugo, she wondered why he never spoke a single word. Maybe it was just because he liked to be silent like Blake probably preferred if Yang didn't always get a rise out of her. Or maybe he was hurt. Some injury he sustained in vacuum that robbed him of the ability permanently. Or maybe he was just born like that. She thought it better not to ask and possibly bring up some painful memories for him. Once again, she noticed just how odd her new companion was at first sight. Tall but silent, imposing yet kind. He looked like he could win a wrestling match against the car, but he never raised a hand in fighting and preferred to just feed little animals. It must have been an odd sight to see someone so big also be so twitchy and silent. Honestly, it made approaching him so much easier knowing he wasn't as scary as he looked. With another sigh, she rested on her arms and lay across the bench. I really thought we were going to catch those guys and do something cool. Finally score some big blows on the White Fang and Torchwick and make those jerks panic. Then we could finally catch them in the act. Everything could start calming down and all my friends would be happy. Jigo looked back at her with tilted head and raised eyebrow. I know it wasn't going to be that simple, but it's a start. But instead they got away and we aren't any closer to figuring out what they want. Ruby's expression dipped a little lower as her eyes went unfocused. There was this girl there with the white fang. I think she was only a few years older than me, but she nearly killed me. I don't know why, but she just scared me with how cold she acted. But even then, it felt hollow. My friend saved me, and we caught her. But before we could take her in, these Grims just swarmed in and attacked everyone. I did my best to free her, and I know I did. And I yelled at her to run too, but Ruby's voice lowered until she stopped talking altogether. The memory of Ren picking her up and running away while Tamari and Kankuro cleared a path ahead from the oncoming Grim returned to her thoughts. Desperate cry to the long-haired stranger to run and hide before it was too late. The shock and confusion that racked her brain as the girl simply closed her eyes and sat back against the tree, and the horror she felt when she looked away before the Grim could pounce on her. How could she just surrender like that? What was it that so reluctantly made her give up like that? The thought alone. Ruby heard the sound of something dropping and birds slithering through the air. She opened her eyes to see the boy in front of her had disappeared from sight. Ruby sat up and looked down before she gasped. Jugo! The large boy had hunched over the ground while his body twitched and convulsed. Ruby immediately jumped off the bench and crouched by his side. Oh, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Did you hurt yourself? Her silver eyes roamed over his body and saw no obvious sign of injury, but the clear pain in his eyes was enough to tell her he was suffering. Her voice cracked with worry. What can I do? Hunting. There he is. Suigetsu and his team ran over once they spotted their teammate and the hooded girl that was trying to help him calm down on the bench. Karin immediately went to his side and checked him over as Suigetsu turned to the young huntress. What happened to him? I don't know. Ruby stuttered, frazzled and confused by her friend's sudden behavior. I was talking to him and suddenly he just fell over and couldn't move. He pulled out his scroll and I got your number, but I've just been trying to keep him calm. She took a deep breath and looked up at Suigetsu. He keeps twitching and shaking. That's normal. It's just his tick. I bet you've seen it before. Suigetsu sighed and ran his hand through his hair before his shoulders lowered. This isn't any life-threatening matter. It's just a condition that affects him every now and then. They're spaced pretty far apart, but they still happen sometimes. Ruby visibly relaxed when she heard that, and Suigetsu chuckled at her expression. You really worried about this, weren't you? No, I kept my cool. Just thinking about how you guys would react once you heard what happened is all. She clearly lied to save face before sparing a look at her friend once again. Is there anything I can do? You contacted us and stayed by his side the entire time. I think you've done enough. Suigetsu patted her on the shoulder before walking over to join Karin and stand by Jugo's side. We've taken care of him in this condition before, so no worries. You can trust him to us now. Are you sure? Yeah, we're sure. Suigetsu nodded. You can head back to your room. Jugo will be all better the next time you come to feed the birds. I promise. Ruby gave a reluctant nod and stepped back a little before sparing a glance back at them. Ruby, thank you for looking after him. The silver-eyed girl smiled and nodded before heading back to the dorms. How is he? Suigetsu asked when she was far enough out of sight. Not good, and it's only going to get worse if we just wait. Karl looked up at him with a frown. He might have another episode here on the campus. Fuck me. Suigetsu palmed his face. Why the hell did he have to come with us? How did we get stuck with the social experiment? Stop complaining and help move him. Karl wrapped one of his large arms over her shoulders, and after a grumble, Suigetsu did the same on the other side. With a grunt, they lifted the larger boy onto his feet and started making their way out of the open. This will only get more troublesome if we don't deal with it fast. I know. We need to make sure Tayuya actually comes and helps us with this because he's big enough pain in the ass when he starts. I know. Well then, we need to act fast. Karin frowned. We need to call this in and we have to contact them to let them know we're off tonight. I know. Suigetsu grimaced as Jugo groaned into his ear. I really hate having to talk with them. Hunting. So I think there's some confusion here that really needs to be cleared up. When we called you, you're supposed to come running as fast as you can, get on your knees before your superiors, and then we send you off on whatever little task or chore we might have for you. When you call us, the cocky boy paused before chuckling and shaking his head. See, you don't call us. Precise matter, sir. We had to tear you away from the wonderful God-given task of sitting on your ass and doing nothing. But it's important. Whatever you think is urgent or not really doesn't matter to us. The green-haired girl stepped up from the silver-haired boy's side and leveled a bored expression at Suigetsu and Karin. We call on you because she's thought of every plan and move with methodical precision, so we can move you around like a chess pieces. You try and call us, and things could go to hell real quick. That's kind of ironic, don't you think? Karin spoke with a tilt of her head and an obvious sarcasm in her voice. You're lecturing us about acting out of order, but weren't you two skipping around Vale and executing people you weren't supposed to, just so your lady would give you a pat on the head? So get you snickered at the narrowed eyes from Mercury and the intent, and it leaked out at her mocking. How'd that work out for you again? It really sounds like you want to get killed. I know how you and your friends are used to that, right? Emerald returned with a coy smile. I mean, if we get rid of you, another bunch of goons would just take your place after. Maybe, but that would imply you could kill us. Suigetsu shrugged. If I'm being honest, not impressed with what I've seen. Oh, you just haven't seen anything yet. Mercury stepped up to Emerald's side. We'd be happy to remedy that if you want. Although, to be honest, you wouldn't even see anything before it was over. That's enough. The tension between the four immediately vanished when the smooth, domineering voice pierced the silence. They looked back to see the lovely black-haired beauty stroll up to them through the hall before stepping up by her subordinates and crossing her arms beneath her breast. The golden-eyed woman looked between them as she spoke in hush. I understand how hard it must be to work together with new people, but I'll warn you now that I'm not interested in your petty squabble. We are trying to keep away from attention while under the public eye, so you arguing and threatening to fight each other is not tolerated. Mercury nodded his head as his cocksure expression switched for one of caution. Sorry, Cinder. We said that we could meet with these losers ourselves. Emerald attempted to appease her leader. You didn't. Please don't think you can choose what I do and do not need to concern myself with. That is for me to decide, and me alone. Emerald's mouth snapped shut as she lowered her head in shame. Cinder looked around the area they had chosen to meet in and appreciated how thorough they had been in picking a discreet location. It was an empty room, one that seemed to be abandoned from regular use and simply allocated for necessary storage. No CCTV, no normal student routes, just an out-of-the-way location for them to meet and discuss their business. I'm glad to see you all have taken into account that we have to be more clandestine with these meetings. I'm impressed. The raven-haired woman nodded. Emerald, yes, ma'am. Go stand by the door and be a lookout. Make sure if someone passes by, they don't see anything. The green-haired girl looked unhappy with the task assigned to her, but realized it better not to argue, and instead went to watch for any wandering souls. When she was done, Cinder turned to Suigetsu and Karin. So I understand that you were the ones calling this meeting. That's right. Suigetsu answered, wary of annoying the woman that commanded such a respond from those two and who were working under while staying in Beacon. We were told to contact you if ever had to leave for whatever reason, and since we're here, this is one of them. Cinder finished with a nod. I understand. I appreciate the update. In case she and her team had to make a move or initiate a plan, the backup team was ready to help or distract from the activities however possible, and they had already proven that by warning the White Fang about the potential recruit and the people questioning him around the campus. They were loyal, efficient, and always ready to keep her aware of changing possibilities, certain favorable aspects in helpers. She gave a graceful nod. Thank you for making us aware of this change. Fortunately, we don't have any more plans to execute at this time. Not like we need your help anyway. Mercury added, happy to see Cinder didn't chew him out for his insult, and that Emerald snickered at it from across the room. The redhead and white-haired teens sent him glares as he just crossed his arms in amusement. So what's so important you need to take a break? Got a hot date you just can't turn down? What we're doing is none of your concern. Karin bit back before looking at Cinder. Apologies, but this matter pertains to something very confidential. Oh, I know what it's about. Orochimaru already told me what it was. They were surprised to hear the secretive man had spilled such an important detail to the unknown woman already, but the looks her subordinates were giving her, this was the first they had heard of this too. So she simply flipped her hair back over her shoulder before regarding them again. That's why I will allow you to leave for the night. So Suigetsu and Karin shared a look. Thank you. But let me make myself perfectly clear. Cinder's tone was sharp and her voice was firm, making them freeze even though the temperature in the room started to incline. They looked back up and backed away in fright at the fire that seemed to light in her eyes. I understand that Orochimaru is using this setting and the one back in shade to test his little experiment, but I will not tolerate it jeopardizing our mission or my goal. The only reason I allow it to proceed and for you to follow through it because it has piqued my interest. If you cannot control this outing and it causes anything to crumble down, Sulu raised her hand and let fire dance over her palm, then you won't get that chance. Her permission given and her threat clear, the fire disappeared from her palm as the two Elysium members gave us a nod. Cinder smiled, pleased to see the point get across as she started to step away. Of course you've done this before, so I'm sure you won't mess up. And mind telling me how it went after you finished reporting to Orochimaru? Like I said, this whole experiment has piqued my interest. Emmett opened the door for her as she and her charger stepped out. Happy hunting. Once the terrifying woman and her entourage were gone, the two Elysium members finally allowed themselves to take a breath and relax. Karin stumbled back and propped herself up on one arm before taking a shaky breath of relief. God, that woman is terrifying. And Karin pulled off her glasses and wiped her face before fixing them back up her nose, like walking on pins and needles around her. Anything I say that could be interpreted wrong, and I worry she'll already be figuring out how to kill me. Yeah, agreed, but she's still super hot. Oh my god, what is wrong with you? Suigetsu could only shrug nonchalantly as Karin just stared at him like he had two heads. Does the prospect of that crazy bitch burning us turn you on? Is this some weird water and fire thing? No, but I can admit that she's super hot even if she's threatening us. Karin shook her head. Boys, this coming from the girl that mumbles shit I try to ignore every time she spots the same guy walking through the hall, don't you? Suigetsu was saved from Karin's red-haired fury when she felt her scroll start to buzz. He pulled it out and held it up to see us snapped a picture of Tayuya flipping him off. Hello, can you fuckers hurry it up? What's taking you so goddamn long? You know this big bastard is getting rowdier by the second and my melody isn't gonna calm him down forever. Get your scrawny asses back here already and pick up the fucking slack. The call was dropped, and Sugetsu stared at his scroll in silence. With a sigh, he closed it shut and pocketed it before looking up at Karin. You ready? Well, that woman already wished us luck. Karin responded and fixed her glasses up her bridge with a cold, detached expression. Let's go hunting. Stay back. I'm warning you, stay back. She's a spunky one. A lot feistier than most that come through here. No worries, darling. The thug whispered heavily as he slowly approached the terrified woman, looking at her through his scraggly long hair and grinning with his yellow crooked teeth. The woman cowered into a corner until her back hit the wall, and she realized there was nowhere else to go. Why don't you just hand us all your linen and anything else nicer you got on you? How's that sound? But what? Is there a problem with that? I need to pay my rent. If I can't, then I can't stay in the big city and fulfill my dreams. Heard it before. The scraggly-haired thug snatched her purse out of her hands and tossed it back to his friends. She tried to scream, but his hand immediately covered her mouth and stifled her cry. He pinned her to the wall and looked back at his cohorts. Got anything? Just some cards and lipstick. The female thug answered and picked it out of the bag. Nice color, though. Definitely my type. Yeah, we got nothing here. The third thug finally huffed and tossed the purse aside petulantly before looking over at the terrified woman. She dresses better off than she is. That's a peacock if I've ever seen one. Well, that's a shame. The thug silently heard the desperate scream sighed and shook his head. Well, this has been a huge waste of time. We cut you off here and we barely get anything for our time. That's just unfortunate. He looked down at the terrified woman before his eyes roamed over her body. Unless we make the most of it. Her eyes widened in horror and she screamed as loud as she could, her cry muffled by the hand over her mouth as she thrashed around as much as possible. The large man grabbed her wrist and pinned them together before squeezing and making her gasp in shock. Stop! You're just making it harder for yourself. In case you haven't noticed, no one is here. No one can hear you scream. No one's gonna stop me. See, told you we'd find someone. Always some scummy fuckers in every place you go. Just gotta look for where these shit eaters nest. The thugs looked back and saw a group of 14 standing a few yards away in front of the alley. The two girls, both with different shades of red hair. A boy with white hair and pale skin, and another boy with orange hair and standing behind the rest as he shook and twitched at random intervals. The scraggly thug growled, "Kids shouldn't be out this late. Bad for your health." So Sugetsu grimaced. And it looks like they were doing some weird shit here too. Nice catch to you. Kinda hard to miss that shit when the girl was screaming and thrashing about. The thug looked back at their captive and saw his hand was still stifling her sobs and cries. Yeah, shithead, I can still hear her. Trying to shut her up doesn't do much when I'm around. Hunters, the thug whispered as his friends stepped back in fright. They had looked excited to beat up on some kids that had tried to stick noses into their fun, but knowing they were trained fighters made their chances effectively zero. How quickly bravado vanished when you realize you aren't on the winning side. The thug pinning the young woman to the wall looked back at the young hunters before clicking his seat. He pulled her around and held her in front of him like a shield while grabbing her throat. Sorry, but we aren't in the mood for starting a fight, so why don't you let us pass and we promise to let the pretty lady walk? Dude, is there really a version of this where you think you walk away all fine? The version where we're faced with a group of bleeding heart kids that want to play hero properly. The two criminals relaxed a little and chuckled as their leader stepped forward. The lady in his midst was sobbing and weeping to herself for the unfortunate events that only got worse. Seriously, when faced with brass like you, the answer is cake. You twist your arms little, jaywalk across the street, push an old lady over, let her. This shit is easy. Make the shining example, fret and worry, like holding a lady's life on the line, and you freeze up. Now step aside and let us. A soft melody carried over the alleyway and lulled the crooks into a sense of calm. Their anger and sadistic enjoyment at the situation started to vanish as their muscles relaxed as well. The leader's arm slowly slipped off the terrified woman as she gasped and quickly pushed away from her captor. She stumbled back and looked at them in confusion before looking over at the hunters. The short pink-haired girl's fingers danced gracefully over a flute as a haunted melody rung out and pacified the degenerate's behavior. Are you doing this? What the hell are you wasting time for? The Yu barked, pointing her flute at the terrified young woman. Get over here already, for shit's sake. Sorry. The young lady came running over to their side and quickly hid behind them as the thing started to stir awake. Away from her attackers, she looked between the students in shock. You saved me. You picked a shitty night to go out for a walk. You've got rotten luck. Yeah, I know. But thank you for helping me. The Yu didn't look up at the grateful woman. Don't bother thanking us for anything. No, really, you saved me. The young lady looked between each member of Team Scout, and let her relief pour out with tears in her eyes. I really thought that was the end. I thought they were going to, and I would. She hesitated to finish her thought and shivered before shaking her head. But you really came when I needed you most. You're my heroes. Her eyes slowly lowered with the beautiful melody that helped her drift away. Her legs gave out, and Suigetsu caught her in his arms as she fell unconscious. He sent his foul-mouthed teammate a curious look as Taiyo lowered her flute. I couldn't listen to her anymore. Bashful, aren't you? The thug spat as he and his friends stood ready for a fight. Can't handle the praise. Nothing like that. Taiyo muttered as she stepped up close to the resting woman and moved some hair out of her face. It just makes this easier. She held up her flute, let the hidden knife switch out the end of it, and buried it in the sleeping woman's neck in one swift move. The thugs reeled back and watched in shock as she yanked her instrument back out, as blood quickly seeped out of the wound. Suigetsu slowly lowered the woman to the ground and gently laid her down as she bled out in her sleep. The young hunter stood back up like nothing happened and turned to face them directly. And now for you. You killed her, just like that. I thought you were hunters. What the fuck was that? I said she had rotten luck, Taiyo answered. She saw us out here tonight. Can't let her walk if she can lead anyone back to us. And I'm sure you've all realized as well. Karin stepped forward, the delinquent stepping back in fright as she fixed her glasses up her nose. You saw us too. Fuck you, bitch. The lone female charged Karin wildly with her fist pulled back. She threw punch after punch at her target, but Karin easily weaved and slipped between them. The redhead slipped in close towards the other woman's guards before slapping her hand over her mouth and nose. Karin kept that grip there for several seconds. The sound of screams and sizzling flesh continued out before letting go. Oh God, it poison, acid. The woman collapsed to the ground and clawed at her own face as a drop of a dark liquid naturally seeped out of Karin's hand. Don't struggle, it'll only make the pain worse. You whore! The other male thug charged at the bespectacled girl with a knife in hand. He dove for her head and watched her raise her guard, but he was quicker and slashed through skin, only to realize it was water. Too late did he notice that the white-haired boy had slipped in between him and caught him before he could attack. Suigetsu's face bubbled like water before quickly returning to normal. The border huntsman grabbed the thug by the face and lifted him up before slamming him into the ground. Damn it! Shh! Just sleep now. The hand Suigetsu used to pin his foot to the ground quickly melted and turned to water over his head. The criminal gagged and choked as water started to pour into his throat and nose. His legs kicked out wildly and he scratched against the ground as he futilely attempted to escape his drowning. Suigetsu lazily watched as the man beneath him slowly stopped thrashing. He kept the water going a few moments after his struggle, finally stopped before moving his hand and solidified it again. There, now wasn't that easier? The leader of the group watched in absolute horror as his friends were slaughtered without a moment's hesitation. One was sprawled out over the ground with his face twisted in agony after finally slipping into the darkness from drowning, and then realizing that the cries of pain had finally stopped to see that the redhead's poison had taken effect. With his friends dead and cornered in an alley by the murderous hunters, all hope vanished as he stumbled back into a dumpster. What the hell? Is this what hunters do? Just wait for the opportunity to go out and kill people? Just like that. You hardly want to talk. You remember what you were going to do before we got here, right? Suigetsu countered towards the stuttering, terrified man. Besides, we aren't here to get some sick thrill. This isn't for us. The white-haired boy looked back to the tall figure behind him that stood a little straighter. It's all for him. Karin and Taiyo came on either side of Jugo and reached back to undo his large coat. The girls pulled down several zippers and helped to pull the heavy clothing off to reveal the word would hit underneath. Surrounding Jugo upper body were metal plates and locks that covered his arms and chest up to his mouth. With each move he made, the metal plating scratched together as he struggled to keep still. Suigetsu came up around and prepared a hand against his back and turned the latch that connected all of it together. Okay, Jugo, play. He pulled back the metal restraining falling off the orange-haired boy as the rest of his team stepped back and out of his way. The thug looked on in complete silence at the form of the towering man. Hidden beneath all the plating and clothing was a massive, broad frame lined with strong muscles. The hunched, spastic boy that was halted to the side moments ago was switched out with this behemoth blocking out the alleyway, but it wasn't the stare that caused the man to freeze him. It was the splotches of bone and black that covered his skin, mismatched and uneven portions of his chest were marred darker than the night sky. Pieces of bone armor had formed over his body in chunks that only protected a portion of his ribs and sternum. The same design that went down both arms and hands. The odd finger covered completely in black and sharp like a claw, and there was a low growl that grew in the black, jagged too small of the orange-haired boy. The scraggly thug stumbled back in dismay and in disgust at the sight of the monster in front of him. With every small move he made, Jugo's eyes zeroed in and followed him precisely. He jerked to the side, but Jugo already stood in his way and cut off his path. He tried to duck around, but Jugo let out a monstrous roar that made their skin crawl. In a panic, the thug grabbed the lid of a trash can and tossed it at the abomination before dashing through his blind spot. Jugo's hand reached out on reflex and grabbed the man by the collar before he could get away. The terrified man let out a frightened scream, but Jugo easily lifted him off of his feet and spiked him into the wall in a single move. There was a sickening crack when he impacted the brick wall and slumped down in a heap on the ground. Jugo slowly stood back up and stalked forward towards the downed man. His legs and arms were twitching even as he let out terrified gasps and sobs at his inability to even move him. The fear, the dread, the despair, it was palpable. Jugo's tongue ran over the back of his head. Sugetsu caught it, and Tayuya stood against the wall by the alley and kept watching as Jugo proceeded to satiate his hunger. The sounds crept out from the alleyway and sent chills and shivers down spines. Even after so many times, this was still an experience none of them had grown used to. It still makes me sick. Karin grimaced and tried to block it out by covering her ears to little avail. She looked over to see Tayuya having better success with some headphones and music. Hey, do you have any spares? Some for sharing, maybe? The rude pink-haired girl simply tilted her head and mouthed something in confusion while pointing to her headphones, trying to convey to her teammates that for some reason she couldn't hear them now. You betcha! The redhead seethed and clenched her fist as a dark, vicious liquid started to seep from her skin. With a growl, she whipped her hand aside and let the poison slide away before turning her glare towards her lethargic leader. If this happens again while we're here, we need to find some way to force this all on her. No complaints here, but that's assuming this does happen again. Sugetsu paused for a moment and let the sound of flesh being rended from bone reach their ears. Covered in shock with disgust as Sugetsu spoke. This much food after that much negativity might just keep him going through the rest of the semester. If we're lucky, that'll be it for the entirety of our time here. Yeah, if we're lucky, which they never put much stock into being fortunate. They survived this long by playing it smart and making sure Jugo stays away from stressful situations, not because the giant couldn't handle it, but because they needed to keep him away from those that panicked and submitted to fear. Jugo could pass as a normal, albeit shaky and taciturn young man when he was around a positive or even neutral stimuli, which was why they had experienced so few of these episodes while surrounded by confident, trained students that were used to facing adversaries and fear. The students and hunters in training proved steadfast. But the fear from the civilians, this was a ritual they had perfected through practice after all. For a moment of silence between the team, the sound of Jugo's feasting starting to linger out, doing whatever they could to block it out. Karin turned to Sugetsu. Did you hear from the base? Kim didn't make it back from the White Fang assignment. Apparently she got too careless and couldn't escape in time. If Kinemaro and Jiro are to be believed, it was pretty evident by the tone of her voice how much credit she actually put into the statement. That's two we've lost now working this job. So get aside and sit on his water bottle while leaning back against the wall. That was faster than they usually lost others, but not nearly the most they've lost at a time. In Elysium, they were trained from the moment they were recruited to face the world and missions Orochimaru decided, trained to survive in deadly scenarios and situations, learning how to fight Grim and other powerful opponents, even how to hurt and kill people when the need arose, as the current situation proved. But no matter how well trained or how prepared they were still losses and casualties. Sometimes killed by Grim, sometimes killed by people. Most times just them taking their own lives because of a situation where information could be taken arose and you threatened to jeopardize Elysium, you'd be hunted, and if you tried to run away, Well, death was the preferable choice. Now that Sugetsu thought about it, perhaps him and his team really were the luckiest people in all of Elysium. Most of the members spent their times training on missions for Orochimaru or underground, some kind of experimentation by him and his team of sick weirdos. Jugo was the unfortunate result of one of those experiments. Although for the life of him, Sugetsu couldn't figure out how anyone could mix a human with a grim. But they were fortunate enough to just be sent to infiltrate one of the academies to live every day out like normal students. Was an experience they had never believed they could have again in their life. Occasionally finding a group of vagrants or runaways for Jugo to fill himself on was an easy condition to accept when it meant that they could still live life how they wanted. Sugetsu dared not admit it, but his time at Jade had been the most fulfilling since Hosuki. Sugetsu exploded in a shower of water. Jugo barreled through him like a rabid animal. Kara and Tayuyo were quick to jump back as they saw their bulky teammate lowered on the ground and panting for air. His blackened mouth and sharp teeth were stained red while his eyes were wild and unfocused. He lowered himself to the ground and stalked towards his weary teammates while letting out a low growl. Jugo, it's us, Karin and Tayuya. We're not here to hurt you. We're all on the same side, remember? Karin whispered. Jugo slowly stepped forward as Tayuya drew her flute. Jugo, we're gonna need you to cut the shit and come back to us already. The orange-haired monstrosity roared and dove for the girls before a sudden stream of water struck his side and pinned him to the wall. The water reformed into Sugetsu and he clambered to grab the struggling Jugo's arms. Karin was quick to aid him and grabbed Jugo's other arm despite him still having enough power to throw them both around him. Hurry up with the damn message already. Bitch, the fuck do you think I'm doing? Here! Tayuya threw her scroll and Sugetsu caught it before pressing it against Jugo's ear. Jugo, it's me. The monstrous boy paused for a moment as the familiar message echoed in his ear and pierced through the fog that plagued his mind. His thrashing body stilled and relaxed as Sugetsu and Karin lowered him to the ground. You need to calm down, okay? Sugetsu, Karin, and Tayuya are counting on you to be strong. I know it might be hard being the way you are, but I know you can control this. You won't lose yourself. You never would. Kimi. I'll see you again soon, okay? Until then, just stay strong. It won't be long now until we see each other. Just don't lose. The message ended and Sugetsu tossed the scroll back. Once it seemed like Jugo would no longer attack it, he grabbed him by the shoulder and lifted him up. You back with us, buddy? Jugo groaned and rubbed his head but nodded. His bloodlust and animalistic behavior had disappeared, but his features were still mixed with those of a grim. The orange-haired boy looked over himself again as his eyes fell in despair. He looked over at his clothes and restraints neatly folded together in a pile and reached for them. Not yet, man. Sugetsu stopped him before pointing back down the alley. There's still a few bodies remaining, plus hers too. Sugetsu motioned to the woman they killed to keep their secret, and we can't leave them like that. Jugo's face fell and he hung his head while standing back up. He looked back up at his handiwork and shivered before Sugetsu clapped him on the back. Dig in. Hunting. Jugo sat by himself on a bench in the Beacon campus and threw some breadcrumbs out for the birds to nibble on. Students continued to casually make their way through the campus as he went unnoticed, just feeding some animals. They had no idea what he was or what he did. There was no way they could know that just less than 12 hours ago he had torn into humans' bodies and devoured whatever he could touch. No one would ever find what remained of the corpses, and just like everyone else, those people would just go as reported missing. A great big part of him was disgusted by how he made those people disappear just like that, and he was even more disgusted by the part of him that was relieved to have eaten again. The longer Jugo stayed like this, the harder it was to remember what he was like before. The memories of when he was just a regular boy continued to fade out further and further away as his mind developed and his thoughts along with it. He could only faintly remember the face of a woman that cared for him when he was young in a village and lost in a haze. Even when he was even new memories, one of Kimi and Orochimaru and others of Elysium only barely peeked through the growing black of fog. He wasn't always like this. His mouth wasn't always filled with jagged teeth, and his body not always marred with pitch black flesh or bright white armor. He could even remember when he was still a normal boy, coming to Elysium and meeting Kiyomaru for the first time and being saved by Orochimaru, showing off his cool powers to everyone else and helping him with the important experiment. He couldn't remember when Orochimaru changed him. He couldn't even remember how it happened, but one day he was normal, and the next he was this. Now he had to be careful because if anyone found out, they would either attack him or he'd make them disappear. Jugo was pulled out of his thinking when he saw a big loaf of bread being waved by his face. He looked back and saw Ruby leaning over the bench with a small smile on her face. She giggled when he turned to look at her, and she waved the bread again. I thought maybe all the birds would like some fresh bread to eat today. Jugo sat up, seeing his new friend return to help him. And I'm really glad to see you're back on your feet again. Ruby quickly made her way around to sit on the bench before shrugging. Well, I mean, you're actually sitting back on your butt, but and not on your feet. But that's better than you out over on the ground. That was really scary. Ruby quickly offered him the bread, and he tore a chunk off of it to toss. She pulled off some pieces and tossed them out, while also sneakily stacking on them when she thought he wasn't looking. The girl gave a little smile and looked down at him, which was another testament to the difference in sizes, because even with her sitting on the bench, he was still almost eye level with her. Are you okay? Jugo just responded with another silent nod. That's good. I was really worried when you fell over, and there was nothing I could do to help. Ruby's fretting gave way to another relieved smile. But I'm really glad your team came to help, and now you're all better. You have some really good friends looking out for you, and I hope I can be one of them someday. She lowered her head in embarrassment and moaned acutely. Oh, that's weird. I made it weird. Jugo watched his new friend silently as she fretted over her awkward behavior. She was such a sweet girl, so nice and kind, just like Kimi. He was glad to have her as a friend. He wondered what she tasted like. She'd probably scream really loudly if he decided to eat her. No, he wasn't gonna eat her, not unless he was told to, or she discovered his secret. He could show her his true form, and then he'd have a reason that would put everyone in jeopardy. It'd be so much fun. They'd all be screaming. It'd be awful. He'd ruin everything. He could have the time of his life. It would be pretty fun. So he might as well do it. No, she was his friend, one of the only ones that treated him normally. What did that mean? Kimi would be so disappointed. Just eat him too. Eat them all. They're all just food anyway. These weren't his thoughts. Not really. Yeah, they kind of are. Her eyes are too scary. They look into your soul. She knows. She doesn't. Tear out her throat now. Jugo shook his head and shivered. Ruby paid apt attention when she saw his twitch act up again. Oh, are you okay? Jugo turned to her and nodded. Oh, good. I thought something was wrong. End of chapter 59.